Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam on a very, very warm day. How's everyone doing today? Good? Good. It has been a few days since we did an episode. Sun is directly in my eyes, which is good. Cool thing about, leaving work now that the daylight savings is enacted is that you get the sun directly in your eyes when you're driving due west. And let's talk about today's big news. Trailer and release date for, what was that show called? Ms. Marvel. The next show after Moon Knight on Disney Plus from Marvel Studios. It is a little interesting to me that they elected to, to put this... Now, here's the thing. It's that, what the fuck is this motherfucker doing? Making a weird-ass maneuver in the middle of the street. Okay, fine. Do you, buddy. So, it is a little interesting to me that Marvel Studios is doing its stuff back-to-back in this way. In so much as, I think Moon Knight is 6 weeks, and then if it's starting with one episode on whatever the day is, the 25th, or the last week of this month, is when they do the first episode, then they wait again, and then it's, what's what I'm looking for here? Then, from there, 6 weeks will be beginning of June. No, it won't. Never mind. 6 weeks from then will be May. Then Kenobi's the end of May. And then because Kenobi is the end of May, it goes from there to, which it seems a little weird to me. It really does. See, because here's the thing. If Kenobi came out on May the 4th, which would have been the branded thing to do, I understand that it's coming out on May 25th, which is the anniversary of the release of Star Wars back in 1977. I understand that. I totally get it, and I understand what they're going for. My thing is, from a standpoint of giving consistent content, you would think they would go May 4th, because that will be about the same time that Moon Knight ends. So you get a month off in between, and then Moon Knight, and then it goes from there directly to Ms. Marvel a week later. Which I think if I have to watch both at the same time, we're going to have an issue unless, Kenobi's super short. Which is always a possibility. It is a possibility that Kenobi is, 4 episodes, 5 episodes. But, fuck, if I gotta go at the same time, I gotta watch both Kenobi and Ms. Marvel, I think Kenobi's gonna get the back seat on this. I'm sorry. I'm more interested to see Ms. Marvel because, I know it sounds sacrilege for someone of my stature who, loves the prequels for what they are. It feels a little weird to me that they're going to do this in this way. I mean, that's just me. That's just me looking at the situation and being like, oh, so, therein lies my bigger issue here. So yeah, what we have here is this bigger, broader thing of, what's what I'm looking for here? I feel like I'm just not articulate today. In terms of this release schedule, I don't think this is a particularly great way to schedule it out. Especially considering doing one I know what they're thinking. It's Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm have to do their own thing and not really care too much about what the other's doing. And ideally, in a perfect world, both of them would have content coming out at the same time. For Walt Disney as a whole, the Walt Disney Company as a whole, that's the best way to have it happen. But, goddamn, if I gotta sit here and I gotta watch 2 in one night, and then in the morning record one review, and at night record the other, and hope to God that over the course of that there is no, there's no news that happens during the day, we're gonna have an issue. I'm sorry, it's something that is a lot to handle, for me at least. I mean, and people who are watching are probably not in the same position I am, where you're covering it all on a week-to-week basis, but still, it is a little bit annoying. But yeah, so moving on to the subject at hand, which is the trailer for Ms. Marvel. I'm interested that they changed I'm okay with the changes to her power set. And let me explain why. It's going to take place over between 6 and 8 episodes, this show. It's not going to be this vast kind of, big thing with, it's going to be, it's not a movie where it's over and done in 2 hours. And for the majority of the 2 hours, she's not actually using her powers. She has to use her powers a little bit in each episode. Otherwise, that's what they're concerned with, is people not having interest if she's not using her powers constantly. It's kind of like, a little bit in each episode, The Flash uses his powers. A little bit in each episode, Oliver Queen would shoot an arrow. A little bit in each episode, Supergirl would use her powers. So, if they're doing this show, and she's not using her powers a little bit in each episode, that's going to be a problem. The stretchy powers does not translate well to the screen. To say that it is kind of if they were to do it on the screen on a TV budget, it would look jarring. It would look kind of like body horror almost, trying to translate that in that way. So I'm okay with them changing it to the light constructs. Plus, if we're going to do the Marvels, and the Marvels comes out next year, I want to say the Marvels comes out very early next year. I want to say it's the first movie of next year, and then they move Quantumania into mid-year. Either that or it's flipped and it's the mid-year movie and Quantumania is the early movie. Either way, no matter what you're doing, you still have to address the fact that, if you're going to tie her in, that's the big thing that's got to change here, is that Ms. Marvel in the comics is an Inhuman. She got her powers from Terrigenesis. She was exposed to the gas. She gets her powers when exposed to the gas. She becomes Ms. Marvel in that regard. So, because her powers are so based in being an Inhuman in the comics, to sit here and be like, oh, well, we're gonna do here something different for her power set. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think that would, you couldn't do the same origin. And if you're off the reservation changing the origin anyway, and you're going to tie her into Captain Marvel and now Spectrum in Monica Rambeau, I don't think that you can really do the same kind of, you can take the liberty to change the powers. And with the light constructs, you can still do the giant fist. You can still do the growing to look bigger, and you can still do all of that stuff. But you get a little leeway to make it not look human and not look like it's her physical flesh doing that. I know they're dealing with a bigger budget than they did on The Flash, but look at how they handled Elongated Man before Hartley Sawyer got fired. Look at what happened there, and look at how that looked. And now be like, okay, we got to do that. It's got to look real, and then when we do it in a movie, it'll look better, hopefully. But for right now on this show, we got to build it. So I think doing that, and then if we're going to tie her into what Miss Marvel is, and that's the thing too. It's like they're saying she's from Jersey City, so there is a world in which she gets her powers similar to Wanda. Maybe she was in Westview, in which case there's a lot more metahumans, or whatever Marvel calls, mutates, I think is what they call them, because mutants are people who are born with a mutation of the gene, and then that mutation causes powers. That's a mutant. I think a mutate is like Spider-Man or someone like that, who gets powers after the fact, and it changes their genetic makeup to allow them new things. So Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, all of them who have physical powers that are built into who they are. That's not Iron Man, who built his powers. They're called mutates, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, though. So yeah, I think that if we're going to address this larger issue that is at hand here, it's the smartest way to do it is to just change, we're changing the origin as it is, change the origin further. and I don't have a problem with that. What I am interested in is this idea that a bunch of people who, like, are against Marvel because of the social stances that Marvel takes, and, like, the idea of putting the Muslim superhero here, they're taking the stance all of a sudden that they are shitting on the comic, which, if you recall, it's kind of like how Star Wars fans pivoted all of a sudden to, like, you know, how dare they shit on what George Lucas did? And it's like, well, you did that for the better part of, like, 2 decades, so, like, maybe, you know, glass houses, you know, all of that good stuff. It's one of those situations where it's like, you know, like, you know, people, like, how easily we forget what happened to get us here in the first place, and it's, you know, you know, like, to this day, people don't accept Miss Marvel because she was one of the, you know, the all new, all different initiative, and people hated that. It's like, you know, I heard someone say, like, oh, it's ridiculous for Robbie Reyes to be, it's like, you have a fucking guy who's got, like, a muscle car and it's tricked out with the power of the devil. On what planet is that not cool? Like, come on, it says he's Spanish. Like, don't sit here and be like, oh, it's boring to me that he's in a muscle car. Like, no, it's just, you're trying to find a way to explain away the fact, if he was white and he was in a muscle car, you'd be like, oh, this is awesome. Like, come on. So, like, Robbie Reyes is one of those characters. There was also, like, you know, there were a few others that came out of that initiative that, you know, hopefully will get their due on the big screen. Wow, this guy is going the speed limit on the service road. So yeah, so I think that the bigger issue here, like, I like the stylized, like, you know, the way her fantasies are kind of stylized, like she's reading a comic book. I really like how that looks, and if they were to ever do a Gwenpool, that would be a cool thing for them to do and continue on there, because of how her character works and how her character's so meta. That would be pretty cool for this to, you know, for this to happen. I would be interested in seeing that, and I'm interested to see that because it looks so different. And I saw, like I was watching, like, someone at work said to me after the fact, like, I don't know, a high school thing, and I'm like, you blew Spider-Man, like, endlessly. You blew the MCU Spider-Man, like, oh my god, this is great, he's in high school, it's like the comics, it's like this is the best thing ever, and then it's like, you know, I don't know, they're doing a TV show set in a high school, and it's like, come on, man, like, at least be consistent in your criticism, because, like, that's the character. That's the character. She's a Young Avengers member. So I think that's really where we're going. It's really starting to feel a lot like Phase 1, but for the Young Avengers, where it's like Hawkeye is now introduced. We have Hawkeye. Kate Bishop is here. We have Yelena in a new Black Widow. We're about to have Ironheart coming soon. We're about to have Black Panther in Shuri as the Black Panther. Who else is there? Like, Falcon, I know technically isn't Young Avengers. Well, he is in the comics, but, like, when we look at, like, you know, how old Sam Wilson is compared to everyone else, for him to be, like, he could be the leader of the Young Avengers, and that would be cool. Like, I would watch that, and I would also watch Thunderbolts. But either way, we have these characters who are starting to assemble, and it's starting to feel a lot like Phase 1 again, in a weird way, in this post-Endgame world. I'm okay with the change. I'm okay with the new approach to everything that's happening, and I kind of want to see where it goes. It is a shame that William Hurt passed, and I think it's interesting that I didn't see any recastings immediately after. I think people learned their lesson after people shit all over anyone who did that for Chadwick Boseman in the immediate aftermath of his death, which was really fucked up on a plethora of levels. And I hate whenever it happens elsewhere, but especially if someone dies. And it's like, how does, you know, he died. Yeah, he was older. It's not, you know, like, when Chadwick Boseman died, he took everyone by surprise for, you know, for what's it called, for him to, you know, in this case, he was older, but he was still kind of young. He's only 71, and, you know, to act like, you know, at least I didn't see it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. But he, you know, it is one of those things they need to look into at this point. It's like, how are we going to address the departure, I mean, not the departure, the death of William Hurt on the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe now that he is passed? You can't ignore that. That is, he was very obviously a big part of the plan going forward. Okay, cool. So, yeah, I feel like there's definitely a discussion to be had by like Marvel Studios, like, what are we going to do now? Like, where do we go from here with this brave new situation they're in? Like, it's just fucking bizarre to me that people, like, me not blocking the thing is not an open invitation for you to block. No, you gotta wait, buddy, because you don't get to just jump in. So yeah, I feel I'm interested to see where they go with Ms. Marvel. I mean, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Carol shows up in the show. It's not, like, looking for explicitly, like, I'm not watching it, like, and Carol better show up. Like, in the origin in the comic, she shows up. She's there. But again, comics are different from movies because it doesn't cost anything to add a character into a comic. It costs something to get, you know, Brie Larson to show up on set. There's contracts involved and you know, all of that stuff that goes along with having an actual actress show up to do something. So, like, if she didn't show up, I wouldn't be surprised. But, I mean, it's still something that would be nice. Either her or Spectrum shows up. Like, I think you can get a really powerful moment from, like, I think Monica, like, I think what this show should end with is Monica, like, if it's me, I want Sword involved. I want Sword to find out there's another girl who's got light-type powers similar to Monica. And this character has shown up in, you know, in New Jersey. So Monica is looking for this girl. I want to see Monica and this girl end up meeting. Like, I want Carol to show up at the end. And I think that shot that we see at the very end of the trailer with her sitting on the light pole in costume, I want this to take I want every Disney Plus origin show to take the Daredevil approach. Where in Daredevil, he's fucking around in that black suit for the entire first season until the very end when he gets the Daredevil costume. And you're just like, fuck yes. That we have seen him develop into this person and develop into who he is becoming. If we're going to see an origin story for a superhero, I kind of want to see, you know, I want to see her take that same journey. Like the journey from insecurity to full embracing who she is and all of that good stuff. Like, I want to see that as a, what's it called? Like, played out in full on this, like, what's it called? In this situation. This asshole has stopped in the middle of the fucking road. So that's fun. And I think that's kind of where I want to see this show kind of go. And it would be interesting, and I don't know if they're going to take that approach, or if they're just going to ignore that asshole. And it'll be interesting to see either way what goes on over the course of it, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, the trailer looked really interesting, and I think that for me, this trailer is better than the Moon Knight trailer, because the Moon Knight trailer kind of does not force you to, like, look at Moon Knight and be like, oh, like, I don't have a problem with, you know, not knowing what the show is going into it, but, like, Ms. Marvel, it is very clear what you are getting yourself into when you watch this show. It is very clear that this is going to be the story of, what's it called? The story of this girl coming to terms with her powers and you know, and coming to terms with who it means and what it means to be a hero. Very clear. Moon Knight, it doesn't have that clarity to it. Like, where he gets his powers, what his powers even are, how it works, and all of that. I think Moon Knight is probably the biggest risk Marvel has, like, coming down the line between, you know, what's coming out this year. Because, like, everything else has some kind of tie to the existing Marvel universe. Like, we're talking about Ms. Marvel, and we're like, well, Carol could show up, and Spectrum, and, you know, anyone from S.W.O.R.D. in, what's it called? In WandaVision. I mean, hell, even White Vision could show up, and you know, all of that, and it would create a interesting kind of show to watch. But I don't think that same thing, and that's something I'm interested to see. What happened to White Vision? Because he got kind of fucked off after WandaVision, and no one kind of went looking for him. So yeah, I would be interested. I'm interested to see where this show goes. I'm not. You know, nothing that this trailer hasn't dissuaded me from wanting to see the show, and I don't think that anyone who was going to see the show is dissuaded in any way. I think the only people who are going to there's going to be a lot of people pretending that they don't want to see it, and a lot of like LARPing in that regard. But that's the thing, is that if you were interested in it before, there's nothing about this trailer that's going to make you not interested now. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know, like, what the power set is not as important as how it's implemented, and are you still able to have the same, you know, kind of heartfelt story that goes along with it. Like, and I feel like, too, there are other characters where the power being different would feel like, that's the thing, too. I think that introduced, like, when she was introduced in the Marvel Universe back in 2015, I want to say 2014, 2015, it was right after Secret Wars, and Mr. Fantastic was retired as a character. Like, they didn't retire him permanently, obviously, because he's back now, but he was kind of, you know, not doing what he would normally be doing. He was his own entity, and off on his own. Now, when we look at, you know, Ms. Marvel, and we have a possible Mr. Fantastic showing up in, what was that movie? In Multiverse of Madness, then it is almost redundant to have two people with similar powers. Like, it's not strictly the same thing, in as much as, like, yeah, she's stretchy, and he's kind of, like, he's stretchy too. They do have some differences, but I think that it's interesting. Like, that's the thing, is, like, there are going to be people who are going to be upset about that. For me, it doesn't bother me. And I know that I don't speak for a lot of people. I speak for myself. But in the grand scheme of changes that they could make to the character, considering they don't have to change the source of her power, I don't think that... And especially considering that, like, from a pragmatic standpoint, logistically, it doesn't make sense to have this big thing of, you know, expensive, like, what's it called? Expensive, visual effects. I mean, it's still visual effects heavy, but it's easier visual effects to make look passable. Whereas Stretchy doesn't exactly work in that way. And that's the thing. I feel like there had to be a lot of talk about that behind the scenes at Marvel. Like, the idea of, and that's the thing too, it's like they've done alternate universe things with new characters getting powers and different powers and things like that. Like, you know, there was, I want to say there was a version of some mainstream character that on an alternate, you know, in an alternate universe had different powers and all of that, and it just kind of is okay. Well, I mean, there's Spider-Man, who had organic web shooter Spider-Man in the TV show, in Sam Raimi. Like, there's an example right there. Like, you know, it wasn't a thing that was, you know, common in the comics. It was, you know, a thing that happened, like, you know, elsewhere. It was in one of the comics, but it wasn't a thing that was common. The mechanical ones that were used by Garfield and Garfield and Tom Holland was the norm. So, yeah, it's not something where I'm like, you know, I know, considering it's been a good amount of my discussion has been about how this does not bother me. I just want to get it out there that, like, this is a decision that I will wait to render full judgment on. But by looking at how it is implemented here, I don't think there is cause for alarm for the show. Considering there is definitely a reasonable explanation as to why it is the way it is. And that's something that people just have to, you know, I don't want to say get over, but, you know, it is something that's, you know, not world-ending or earth-shattering to be different. So yeah. So we will wrap up there for today. We will be back on, the next time some news happens. Or whenever I get around to watching another Star Trek movie, which will be Star Trek II Wrath of Khan. But I am busy lately because of the amount of new stuff coming out that I'm trying to watch and get on top of. So I will eventually get around to it, just don't know when. So until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.